Hello, everyone. Just checking in. Week three, I will do this periodically just to comment on some things, maybe expand on some aspects of the week's material. And since this is an asynchronous online class, remind you that we're having a class. Don't feel bad if you've forgotten, because sometimes I forget too. And I don't know when people watch these videos. I think it can be very few, but that's okay because making videos on a regular basis about the class reminds me that I'm teaching the class, which is a good thing. So I want to remind you that you're taking a class, and I want to remind myself that I'm teaching it. I just want to reinforce the idea that you should try to start posting on the discussion board as early in the week as possible. This is a tricky matter because there's a due date that's Sunday by midnight, and people have to have time to read the material before they can intelligently comment on it. But a quick look at the discussion board, I would say that it would be nice if, let me just, I got to pause here for a second because I'm running out of juice. It would be nice to see more by this time of the week. I'm making this on Friday. Just to be clear, I'm not going to be penalizing anybody for waiting to the end of the week to do their posts. If you look at the syllabus, there's no provision for that. I'm just urging you to start taking a look at the material earlier in the week so that you can comment on it earlier in the week so we can have a more coherent and lively discussion board where people have time to actually respond to each other in some sort of way. That's the way that it works best. I'm sending out this announcement or this video with an announcement with a couple of links having to do with Facebook that I've just seen in the news. Because the thing about Facebook, and I'll tell you, I'm thinking mostly about this article in the New York Times about called Facebook and Trump, which is an extremely interesting article and really has to do with Mark Zuckerberg's relationship with Sheryl Sandberg, who is the chief operating officer of Facebook, very powerful Facebook executive, key Facebook executive, who really did a tremendous amount for Facebook because she had all sorts of skills and connections and ways of thinking that, frankly, Zuckerberg didn't. She really helped to grow the company. But some interesting things happened when Trump became president because while Sandberg was kind of a lot of connections with the Democratic political power structure, she was not exactly suited when Trump became president. And that was an interesting time, I think, for Zuckerberg himself politically, who Zuckerberg did have a good relationship with Trump, and Zuckerberg cultivated that relationship. And within the politics of Facebook, a very interesting thing going on. But if it was just about the relationship between Sandberg and Zuckerberg, it wouldn't be that interesting. It's really about Facebook itself coping with the new politics and questions about how its own policies were to be shaped in the face of the changing regulatory structure and changing politics of Washington. I'm including a link, because I read about it in this article, to the idea of the fifth estate, which is in this clip from a speech that Zuckerberg gave, I think, in 2017, where he calls Facebook and social media in general kind of fifth estate. That is extremely interesting, and I think gives us it's part of the wider picture of Facebook in not only American society, but in the global community, its global impact of Facebook. If you want to know more about the idea of the estates, just Google it. The estates I believe, is a French idea before the French Revolution to divide up the country into basically three power blocks, three classes: the clergy, the nobility, and then everyone else, the third estate. So the first estate would be the clergy. The second estate would be the nobility. The third estate would be the peasantry and the urban sort of non-aristocratic workers. The idea of a fourth estate apparently was coined by the British statesman and philosopher Edmund Burke in the 1780s, who was the first one who began to refer to the press as the fourth estate. And that was, of course, nothing official, but it was a recognition of the power of newspapers and journals, the power of journalism, the power of the press. That is, if we saw the clergy, the aristocracy, and the peasantry as different powers within the state, then the journalism, he thought, could be thought of as a fourth one. So the idea of a fifth estate to characterize social media or things going on the internet wasn't created by Zuckerberg. A quick Google search showed me that the movie about Julian Assange and WikiLeaks a few years ago was called The Fifth Estate, and that certainly connects up with what Zuckerberg is thinking. But of course, in WikiLeaks and Facebook being very different aspects of the, what we call it, the second internet or the third internet that started in the mid 2000s, really, with social media. But it's a recognition, Zuckerberg, that the social media is a power within culture, within societies, within American societies and other societies. But if you look at the brief clip, the story that Zuckerberg tells about that power is that it's completely benign, or that maybe not completely benign, but that it's a positive force because it gives a voice and empowers individuals who can use social media to do things that they couldn't before. Ironically, of course, social media companies become, in a different way, a kind of a fifth estate because they wield so much power. Maybe power that they can't control because of what's done on their platforms. So I'm including these things just because they're in the news, but it's kind of cheating because one of my points here is that Facebook is always in the news. I would not change what we're doing about Facebook because I like this particular issue, even though it's something that happened 7-8 years ago, because it's a nice, self-contained, manageable issue, the Facebook experiment that was conducted on their users in 2012, I believe. So wouldn't change that. But the truth of the matter is, with Facebook, we could have a whole course on the ethical problems of not just social media, but Facebook itself. That is, the questionable things about the very idea of what Facebook does. Privacy, more privacy issues, of course, but also, this was obviously put together several years ago. I don't even know if Trump had been elected when I put this together for the first time. Probably not, since most of the articles are 2014. But certainly the Trump presidency and then the attack on the Capitol, which, let's face it, he created and urged. January 6th attack on the Capitol. I hope I'm not being political. I'm just pointing out that Trump created that and wanted that. That was enabled by Facebook and other social media companies. And the whole issue of extremist speech, and we don't mean extremist. When we say extremist speech, we don't mean in America anymore, those people in the world who want to get us. We mean domestic right-wing extremist speech. Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, Three Percenters, other various dangerous right-wing fascist authoritarian groups was enabled by social media and certainly by Facebook, as is pointed out. So I just wanted to throw these things out there because they're in the news. But again, it's cheating because Facebook is always in the news. This little event of 2012, 2014 is it's all but been forgotten. I think mostly, or not mostly, but largely because so much else of troubling and maybe larger social import has happened with Facebook since then. I mean, a a lot of things have happened. There's a lot of water under the bridge since 2014. But I thought I would share these things with you. Just, I don't know if they shed any light on this particular issue of the Facebook experiment, but we're thinking about Facebook this week, and Facebook is in the news. But considering what Facebook is, how troubling. And again, I'm not condemning Facebook just because I don't use it or whatever. I mean, but considering how troubling Facebook is, how ambivalent I think most people are about it, it's always in the news.